Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I'm Darshan Usman. The top stories at this hour. Top political leaders in Rivers State march in solidarity for Wike. ANC slams DA for outrageous demands in South Africa government. Kenyan youth protesters continue nationwide strike. Details in a moment. Let's begin with the political tensions in Rivers State, where we understand that top political leaders from the different wards of Obiakpo have showed their solidarity for the FCT Minister Nyesom Wike in a protest march. The likes of Minority Leader of the House of Representatives, Ogundu Chinda, Speaker of the Rivers State House of Assembly, Martin Amaule, and former Council Chairman George Ariolu led the march. Now, while addressing the crowd, Ariolu said they were in support of peace and order in the state. They're demanding that the Inspector General of Police continues to occupy the councils and not succumb to any form of intimidation. Their open support for Wike comes as the IPO community women on Tuesday barricaded the Port Harcourt airport in protest, leaving passengers stranded as the ongoing political crisis in Rivers State deepens. Earlier, despite calls by the Nigerian police on the organized labor and other groups to suspend their planned protests over the local government tenure elongation crisis in Rivers State, South Nigeria, some supporters of the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, defied the order to stage a peaceful protest across 21 local government areas of the state. News Central correspondent Austin Azu, who is on the ground monitoring the Rivers State political crisis, brings us details.
The protesters, numbering hundreds, gathered near the post office along Azikiwe Road in Port Harcourt, marched to the Port Harcourt City Local Government Secretariat along Bank Road, where the police barricade continued. Some of the writings on the placards with the inscriptions, "Please keep to your words. Caretaker Committee Chairman and Vice are unconstitutional. Let the courts decide," among others. In Bogoma, the council headquarters of Asari Toro local government area, the former council chairman alongside his supporters marched through the streets of the town accompanied by drummers with solidarity songs for the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike.
Peaceful here. By God's grace, this your letter, I will submit it to the Inspector General of Police through my Commissioner of Police. We thank you for coming to be peaceful.
Addressing newsmen, the protesters said they were at the council headquarters to register their support for the police to remain at the 23 local government councils of the state to stop further violence.
Our take. The matter before the court is going to be decided as soon as possible. When that matter is decided, whoever is supposed to be in the council goes into the council. So we are saying something very simple. What we are saying is that the police should remain and maintain peace and order. As you can see, we are peaceful and we are law-abiding.
For us, as Rivers people, we are saying that this whole matter is in court. You understand? So everybody should just, pipe low until the determination of the courts. When the court decides, of course, the police will know what to do. They are there to make sure that things are done in an orderly manner. So we are here to let them to understand that we know their promise and they should keep it. You understand? So, and Rivers people, we're also tired of everyday blood and stuff like that. We are tired.
Action takes its position. Where are you hurrying to? Taking actions that will destroy lives and properties. We are saying no to that. We are in support of what the police is doing. That's why we're also patiently waiting for the outcome or the decision of the Court of Appeal over this matter.
The State Police Command, in a statement by a spokesperson, had advised the Nigeria Union of Local Government Employees and other groups to suspend their planned protests to prevent miscreants from infiltrating their ranks. In Port Harcourt, for News Central, Austin Azu.
Austin for that report. Now joining us on the news to discuss this further is the National Legal Advisor of Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, Henry Akin. Hello, Henry. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be on your platform this afternoon.
All right, so regarding the demand for the Inspector General of Police to continue occupying councils in Rivers State, what legal basis or precedents, supports or challenges such demands under Nigerian law?
My view, I think that the directive of the Inspector General of Police and then the action of the Commissioner of Police Rivers State and his men actually taking siege or laying siege or obstructing governance and administration at the local government level in Rivers State is unconstitutional, it's unlawful and illegal, it's not justified. It's misguiding to say that the police has taken this step to obstruct governance and administration at the entire local government in Rivers State, in a federation where we have the federal, the state, and local government, meaning that at the moment, the police has seized the functioning of the local government on the guise that they are waiting whatever outcome of some court proceedings. That is alien. For me, it's strange, it's undemocratic, and it's unlawful. And I'm afraid I do not even know what particular subsisting matter in court that the Inspector General of Police was referring, because at the moment, there are a number of litigations, a number of court actions that are in different courts at different levels. There are high courts, state high court matters, there are federal high court matters, and even some matters subsisting at the Court of Appeal. There are matters that decisions have been entered, and the police is aware of these decisions. But suffice is that the police is given an excuse that they would want to wait for certain outcome of some decisions or some matters that are pending in court. But the fundamental question here is the workers, service providers, and the people of the respective local governments in Rivers State are not in court in any way. So do they consider that the legitimate and innocent employees and workers at the local government levels who are not in any litigation, not in any court, even the contestations that are in court with respect to the purported tenure extension or elongation or purported membership of Rivers State House of Assembly, which are the matters are probably in different courts, have nothing to do with workers and employees at the local government and service providers, and largely the beneficiaries of the service of the local governments across Rivers State. That's the people of Rivers State in healthcare sector, in education, in social services, and all regards that are supposed to be the functions of the local government to the people, to my people in Rivers State and the various local governments. I think the police didn't really think through in this directive and in this action.
All right,
the
Henry.
action appears to be protecting the interests of some political office holders only.
All right, Henry, you actually called the occupation of the police, unconstitutional, misguided, and undemocratic. Now, we did also see some protests by pro-Wike supporters earlier, and, we're still seeing more of that. What does the protest, by the way, by IPO community women, at the Port Harcourt airport signify about the current political climate in Rivers State, especially regarding public opinion and governance?
Currently, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has guaranteed the right of any individual or citizen or group to express himself or themselves one way or another, provided they are not violating the rights of others. So I wouldn't quite speak to the rationale or the reason for their protests, whether those ones are the respective local governments and then even at the international airport in Port Harcourt. But I think that whatever justification they hold for the protest or solidarity in support of any individual, of course, Nyesom Wike is an individual, and then he has friends, and he has people who support his ideals and his philosophies. And then again, being a politically exposed person, he would continually have supporters. So if he's returning to Port Harcourt from Abuja at any time, and then some individuals say they want to express their solidarity in that manner, it's up to them. The only thing that for me I would condemn is any form of protest that would violate the rights of citizens in this part of the country and will also obstruct governance and administration at the local government level. and then any protest again that will probably constitute some conduct that is likely to breach the peace. Well, I cannot speak as someone, an adherent to a rights of citizens, that it is unlawful for anybody to do any sort of march, whether it's a solidarity march or a protest in support of anyone.
All right, then speak to us, on the ongoing political crisis in Rivers State, not forgetting that this crisis has actually been on for months, since last year. Now, what strategies do you think that stakeholders can employ to de-escalate tensions and also promote constructive dialogue for resolution? Even though so many people, so many stakeholders have said that Port Harcourt or Rivers State is peaceful, but what do you think can be done?
Yes, apparently, I think we give thanks to God for His grace that we are still having the peace in Rivers State, and then particularly in Port Harcourt. But retracting, going back to sometime in October of 2023, and then the build-up of the unnecessary, avoidable, and rather orchestrated crisis in Rivers State, not physical crisis per se, I think political difference amongst political parties and political office holders and politically exposed persons. Otherwise, it is not any form of crisis per se in Rivers State. I am speaking from my office, and I'd actually just come from an interview from a radio station, and everybody is going around. My children are in school. So there is a great extent of stability and peace in Rivers State. But then the political orchestrated crisis is such that sometime in October 2023, we woke up in Port Harcourt and then saw all of what has become notorious across the state. I need not bore this discussion with what the Rivers State House of Assembly, some former members at that time, publicly declared their defection. And that happened in proceedings on the floor of the Rivers State House of Assembly. Contrary to what some are claiming now, that there are mere rumors on social media and other platforms. No, the proceedings of 11th December 2023 that were recorded and covered by different media platforms was to the effect that the speaker at the time, Right Honorable Martin Ameuli, publicly declared that the other members of the House, had 26 of them, including himself, had declared that they were no longer members of the People's Democratic Party that sponsored them to office, and that they had defected to the All Progressives Congress. And he took turn to read the letters of that defection by the members. He started particularly with that of the Deputy Speaker. This is a fact that happened on the floor of the House on the 11th of December, purportedly so anyway. And also that led to the remaining members of the House electing a new speaker, Right Honorable Edison here, I believe, who then declared constitutionally, pursuant to Section 109, subsection 1, paragraph G of the Constitution, to the effect that if that happens, then a speaker shall declare those seats vacant. The law didn't require any court to do that declaration, or any other authority or person, but the speaker. So that happened, and then that became if you like, the climax of the crisis in Rivers State, where those who are defected held on. They acknowledged, they agreed that they are defected. They have done so on various affidavits sworn to oath in the various cases before court, that they had actually defected. Some even went on to advance their reasons for defecting on public media as well.
Okay, Henry.
One enemy judge, I think the spokesperson of that group, also alluded to that.
All right,
but
Henry. Well, due to time constraint, we'll have to actually end the conversation here. But thank you so much for speaking to us on this, and also for laying this foundation. Thank you. All right, we'll go on a break, and when we come back, the news continues. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Now, let's also tell you that the Sokoto State government says, contrary to speculations by some persons and groups, the current administration of Governor Ahmed Aliyu has no plan to depose the Sultan of Sokoto, Muhammad Sa'ad Abubakar III. In a statement on Tuesday, a spokesman for the state government, Abubakar Bawa, condemned campaigns to smear the cordial relationship existing between the state government and the Sultanate Council. A religious organization, the Muslims' Rights Concern, MURIC, had alleged a plot by the state government to dethrone the Sultan. Nigeria's Vice President, Kashim Shettima, had on Monday said the throne of the Sultan is an institution that must be jealously guarded and protected. Elsewhere, the Ogun State Governor, Dakwa Abiodun, has emerged as the chairman of the Southern Governors Forum, while the Governor of Anambra State, Chukwuma Soludo, will serve as his deputy. This was communicated by the chairman of the Southwest Governors Forum and the Governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, after the forum's meeting at the Presidential Lodge in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, on Monday. Now, given his acceptance speech after the meeting, which lasted for over 5 hours, Governor Abiodun pledged not to betray the confidence reposed in him and his vice by their colleagues. Governor Abiodun is replacing the former governor of Ondo State, the late Rotimi Akeredolu, and is expected to give the necessary leadership for the growth and development of the region. To health matters, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Prevention says the country has recorded 1,528 suspected cases of cholera and 53 deaths in 31 states across 107 local government areas. The Director General of the NCDC, Dr. Jide Idris, said this on Monday at a press briefing on the update on the cholera situation in the country. Idris also said the federal government has activated the National Emergency Operations Center for Cholera. He disclosed that experts who conducted the risk assessment last week placed Nigeria at increased risk of cholera transmission and impact. In the same vein, flooding has overwhelmed the city's drainage systems and contaminated water supplies. This may have led to the cases of the recent cholera outbreak, an acute diarrheal illness caused by infection of the intestine with Vibrio cholerae bacteria being on the rise. Cholera spreads through contaminated water and food, making the current conditions in Lagos a perfect storm for an outbreak. News Central's Bettina Nweli reports.
Health officials are now more than ever emphasizing the importance of proper sanitation and hygiene practices to prevent further spread of the disease. During a press conference earlier Monday, the Commissioner of Health for Lagos State, Dr. Akin Abayomi, emphasized the need for residents to maintain environmental sanitation.
When you buy a beverage on the street, check that it has a NAFDAC number on it. If it doesn't have a NAFDAC number on it, then it is not a registered manufacturer of a beverage and it should be avoided. Please keep your general environment clean and sanitized.
Contrary to the news making rounds that the outbreak came from the consumption of a particular tiger nut drink, the Commissioner talked about steps being taken to trace the origin of the outbreak, while other officials spoke about protective plans being set up for the children who are set to resume school activities after the Salah holiday.
One of the main principles of curbing the spread of a dangerous pathogen is to offer treatment absolutely free of charge of any suspected case in our government hospitals. That makes sure that we can attract patients to our facilities without them worrying that they have to pay. It allows us to remove from community patients who are infected. Thereby, we're able to slow down the transmission and bring an end to an outbreak. I'm presenting here on behalf of a multidisciplinary team made up of multiple agencies, ministries, directorates, as well as partner agencies and federal institutions.
On the environment, the General Manager of LASEPA, Mr. Tsunji Ajayi, had this to say.
People should take personal responsibility for the cleanliness and the purity of the water that they consume and make food with as much as they can. Boil it, like you had said earlier, dispose your sewage properly, use proper sanitation facilities that you have around. Don't be a danger to yourself and to your neighbors.
The Ministry of Health, in collaboration with the State Ministry of the Environment and its agency, the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency, LASEPA, continue to collect samples of water sources, food and beverages to identify the source of contamination. Residents are advised to remain vigilant, practice good hand hygiene, and participate in community sanitation activities to stop the spread of cholera. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Nwili.
Away from health matters, the Academic Staff Union of Universities will appraise its mobilizations across various zones ahead of its planned nationwide strike action. Now, the union across various branches issued a 4-week ultimatum to the federal government over some outstanding demands. Last week, the Benin zone of the Academic Staff Union of Universities decried the non-review of members' salaries after the last exercise that took place 15 years ago. The union has vowed to escalate its struggle against the federal government over lingering demands, including funding for public university revitalization, unpaid salaries, and implementation of the University Transparency and Accountability Solution. Earlier, we were joined by a public affairs analyst, Shola Omolayo, to discuss this further.
Of our education. Unfortunately, we are still at it again. 3 weeks, 4 weeks notice, 5-week notice. Must we be discussing this at all? Must we? Why will you allow the engine room of this country to down to? For us, we don't understand the implication of when the academic staff of all our institutions, either from the tertiary level down to the primary level, are going through hazard like this. We are killing the brain and the power work of this country. It is not good. There's nothing, there's no other word that we could describe than to agree to the fact that it is not good. It just shows that the government of this country does not, when I say they don't understand the value of academic knowledge in the area of education.
Residents of the Trademore Estate at the Lugbe area of Abuja have expressed fears over the inability of the Federal Capital Territory Administration to clear the waterway around the area, which has been blocked by other private estates, saying they fear their houses will be submerged as Nigeria reaches the peak of its rainy season. Earlier reports had claimed 2 residents of the estate lost their lives in the recent flood, which affected the area. However, the residents say the report is untrue. News Central's Joshua Marai has details.
This is Trademore Estate in Nigeria's federal capital, Abuja. Like previous years, the estate has repeatedly been submerged by floodwaters anytime the area witnesses torrential rainfall. However, eyewitnesses say the recent incident did not record any loss of life.
So what happened today that this morning as early as 5:30 to 6, the water was like falling, it was rising as if, but before you know it, the water have to, because there's a place who have a box where the water have to box there. So when the water have to box there, then the water now start coming up. So thank God nobody dies. Even some of my personnel that sleep inside, I have to wake them up. All of us have to stand up to start saving some people's property. So nobody dies in this estate.
Automatically, this water is not coming from this estate. This affection is not in this estate. It's from somewhere else. You can see something like that. It block here. Let them shift back. Let them give us a gap so that the water can be moving freely.
Well, so far, no physical activity, has been carried out by the different government agencies to correct this issue. But what we've had so far has been a town hall meeting where Ministry of Environment, called all the relevant authorities, all the stakeholders that has to do with anything flood within the nation. We met in their office. They looked at the whole issue critically to address the incessant flood within Trademore environment, Trademore and its environments. And they identified key features that actually causes this flood within and around Trademore. They took steps to, apportioning practical steps on how to address these issues. But up till date, no action has been taken.
Some of them expressed fears over their inability to sleep peacefully whenever it rains and called on the government to address the situation with the blockage of the waterway in the area, saying they fear their houses will be submerged as the rainy season reaches its peak. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarayi.
Coming up after the break, Mali junta jails 10 opposition. Now away from Nigeria, Mali has jailed 10 opponents of the ruling military junta, including leading opposition politicians, for demanding a return to civilian rule. The lawyers said the 10, who include the heads of parties and groups who signed a March declaration urging the restoration of democracy, are accused of illegal gatherings and plotting against the legal authorities. Those jailed were among 11 people detained last week while holding a private meeting in the capital Bamako after calling for a return to civilian rule. The junta has banned political party meetings. The military rulers who seized power in 2020 had promised to organize elections and hand over power to civilians by the end of March this year, but later postponed elections indefinitely. Police and youths have clashed in the streets of Nairobi as the protest against proposed tax hikes continued in the capital on Tuesday, with police firing tear gas at the crowds of young demonstrators. Discontent over the spiraling cost of living has prompted demonstrations with a nationwide strike called. The mainly Gen Z-led rallies, which began last week, have taken President William Ruto's government by surprise. There was a heavy police presence early Tuesday in Nairobi's business district, with officers in full riot gear blocking access to Parliament. Elsewhere in the country, crowds were marching in the port city of Mombasa, in the opposition bastion of Kisumu and Ruto's stronghold of Eldoret. According to rights groups, 2 people had died following Thursday's rallies in Nairobi. Now, joining me on the news to give more insight on happenings in Kenya is Galvin, the Managing Director of Exigent Risk Advisory. Hello, Declan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right, so the number of demonstrators, seem to be increasing daily across the country. Now, in your opinion, what makes these protests unique?
Well, so even though you can't tell from kind of the very nice background that I have right where I am, what we're seeing across Nairobi is really at this point unprecedented, both in terms of turnout and the fact that these protesters are on the streets organically without the kind of payments that we typically see from politicians for people to rally. These protests are really at this point a whole of society endeavor, where we have the Law Society of Kenya issuing statements in support of protesters and their civil rights. We have religious leaders who have called for an end of police brutality and also supporting protesters. And we have, of course, has been reported widely, Gen Z and the youth who are using social media in a very elaborate manner in order to kind of coordinate and make sure that people are in the right places so that they can have their voices heard. So this is a very unique situation that has really kind of grappled the entire city and the country at this point.
All right, Declan. Now, the fact that you're on ground in Nairobi means that you've actually witnessed things as they unfold. Now, how intense and coordinated would you say it is? That's the protest.
So where I'm sitting right now in Karen, which is a very leafy, very nice upscale neighborhood, a couple of moments ago, there was many hundreds of protesters just over my left shoulder moving down Gong Road. And we haven't seen civil unrest or protest activity in this part of the city for well over 10 years. And so it really kind of just highlights the scope in which people are participating. It's important to mention that these protests are peaceful. There's very few credible reports of protesters vandalizing or committing acts of violence. They are simply occupying streets and trying to make their voices heard. And it is impacting not just Nairobi, but in kind of the upcountry areas and other counties, whether that's Eldoret, whether that's Meru, Mombasa, certainly Kisumu. And this is very unique, again, given that this is mostly apolitical.
All right, Declan. Now, you did say that the protests are peaceful, but what do you have to say, concerning the reports that 2 people have already lost their lives in the course of the protests?
So these are some really kind of important drivers that are bringing people out to the streets today, and very likely in the days to come. So there were, as you mentioned, 2 deaths. These were again of peaceful protesters, and what we're seeing is clashes between demonstrators and state security services. And this is something that when I was talking with demonstrators today, either by phone or in person, this is something that's also animating and driving their activities, just as much as the reported abductions last night by at least 6 influencers and activists overnight. So these are also key issues this morning and afternoon.
All right. Now, you did say that, the protest is mostly spearheaded by young people. That's the Gen Zs. Now, despite these deaths and, everything going on, they are not relenting. What would you say is their driving force?
So just those 2 examples that I mentioned in terms of the abductions, the deaths, and really kind of broader, if we look at what's going on in Kenyan society, and this is the same, I think, globally, it's obvious that the international system that we all live and operate in is disconnected from the reality of everyday people. And Kenyans are not feeling the kinds of economic and social dividends that's necessary for them to have, daily sustenance or be able to achieve the goals that they want. And so this is more than just a finance bill. This is really the youth who feel oppressed. They feel disconnected from society, and they feel that the state is abusive. The finance bill is just kind of the trigger for a whole range of social and economic grievances.
All right. Now, Declan, just before we let you go, speaking of, daily sustenance, do you think that the protesters can maintain the momentum beyond this week, if the government does not give in to their demands?
It's hard to say. Historically, protests in Kenya that have been motivated by social or economic grievances have not sustained over a medium or long term. Protests that have focused on constitutional change, political reforms, those have had much more effectiveness, in Kenya over time. So we'll see. What we are observing right now in the National Assembly is politicians trying to ram through this finance bill. They see the finance bill as the trigger, and if they can just kind of get it over with, they're hoping that all of this will kind of burn out in the next few days. But given the scope and given the participation levels in this, I think that we need to consider the possibility that this will continue, at least in the near term.
All right, well, we'll keep our eyes on the ground and see how it goes. But thank you so much, Declan, for your time and also for speaking to us on this.
Thank you so much.
Now moving on, the ANC has slammed Democratic Alliance's demand to be granted 11 cabinet positions, including the role of deputy president in the proposed government of national unity. Now this follows the DA's federal chair, Helen Zille, sending a letter to ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula stating that her party was seeking 11 ministerial and deputy ministerial posts within the GNU. So far, 10 parties, including the ANC, DA, IFP, PA, FF+, UDM, RIS Mzansi, Al-Jama, PAC, and GOOD, have assented to the GNU deal. Now, the ANC resorted to proposing the formation of a government of national unity after failing to secure a majority of over 50% in parliament, managing only 40% of the national vote in the May 29, 2024 elections. Earlier, a political analyst from Gauteng in South Africa, Sandile Swana, joined us on the news for more discussions.
Our records in the country show that in every province, for instance, where a need like this arose, the party with the largest vote would lead the formation of government. That has been our tradition here in South Africa. In this instance, the ANC has the largest vote, almost double those of the DA in actual fact. So it needs to lead that. And on top of that, legally, our law says it is the prerogative, in other words, the exclusive right of the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, to appoint the cabinet as he sees fit. And lastly, the DA only got 20% of the vote, about 22% of the vote. Therefore, if the cabinet is a given number, they cannot get more than the 20% that they actually got in the elections. And there are different interpretations of that as well.
Still ahead. U.S. says it sends arms to Ukraine to defend its sovereignty, including Crimea. We'll bring you details after the break. In other news from around the world, the U.S. Department of State says that the U.S. envoy to Russia, Lynn Tracy, told the Russian government that the U.S. provides weapons to Ukraine so it can defend its sovereign territory, including Crimea. The Kremlin on Monday warned the United States of consequences and summoned its ambassador after Moscow said a Ukrainian strike with a U.S. missile on Crimea killed 4 people. Moscow has increasingly blasted Washington and Kyiv's Western backers for supplying weapons to be fired on Russian targets, calling them direct participants in the 2-year conflict. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov called Sunday's strike on Sevastopol barbaric and accused Washington of killing Russian children.
Crimea, I will just tell you what the ambassador said when she met with the Russian Foreign Ministry, and that is, of course, that we lament any civilian loss of life in this war. We provide weapons to Ukraine so it can defend its sovereign territory against armed aggression. That includes in Crimea, which, of course, is part of Ukraine. And Russia could stop this war today and end the suffering caused by the war Russia launched today, if it would stop its occupation of sovereign Ukrainian territory and stop launching attacks on civilians. But I will say, you have seen Russia make ridiculous claims about responsibility in the past. You might recall that after the terrorist attack in Moscow in March, they blamed the United States, despite the fact that the United States had warned them about the attack in advance. So it's not unusual for the government of Moscow to make ridiculous, hyperbolic claims about responsibility that aren't borne out by fact.
To business now. Operators in the downstream oil sector have called on the federal government to intervene by ensuring the provision of crude oil to the Dangote petroleum refinery, as marketers now prefer to buy cheaper imported refined petroleum products rather than patronizing Dangote refinery. They also slammed the international oil companies operating in Nigeria for selling crude oil to Dangote refinery above the global market prices, describing this as anti-country practice. This came as the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria explained that the reason marketers were shunning the diesel and aviation fuel produced by the Dangote refinery was that the products were higher in cost. The national president, Sa'ad Abubakar III, stated this while reacting to claims by the Dangote refinery that it had sold about 3.5 billion liters of refined products to Europe and other countries because some marketers were importing dirty fuels into Nigeria. South Africa is risking a 168.32 billion rand climate finance pact by delaying the closing of a number of coal-fired power plants. This was disclosed by a panel appointed by the country's environment minister. In an agreement known as the Just Energy Transition Partnership, South Africa won the bulk of the pledges from some of the world's richest nations in loans, grants and guarantees in 2021. They offered to help the country reduce its dependence on coal for power generation on condition that it phased out a number of its older plants using the dirtiest fuel. A unit in the South African presidency earlier this month made a presentation about the nation's new plans to the World Bank-linked climate investment funds, which is considering allocating $500 million to South Africa. Now, in the world of sports, the Los Angeles Lakers have named television pundit and former player J.J. Redick as their new head coach. The former Orlando Magic and LA Clippers shooting guard moved into punditry after ending his 15-year playing career and has no previous coaching experience. The 40-year-old also co-hosts the basketball podcast alongside Lakers stalwart LeBron James. He replaces Darvin Ham, who was sacked by the Lakers in May. Olympic champion Akin's hopes for a repeat came crashing down on the first lap backstretch of the 800-meter final at U.S. track trials Monday. Now, the 2022 world champion tripped around the 200-meter mark. Mu got back to her feet and finished, but was more than 22 seconds behind the winner, Nia Atkins, who ran 1 minute 57.36 seconds. The 23-year-old from New Jersey was choking back tears as she headed quickly off the track and through the tunnel after the race. She did not immediately come through the media area for interviews. Now, the Olympic trials were her first meet of the year after dealing with injuries all season. She looked to be in good form in her first 2 rounds, but was out for the run-in in the final before the first 200 meters. UK anti-doping banned Moises Caleres for 4 years on Monday, only to learn the Mexican boxer had passed away in March. Caleres tested positive for cocaine and its metabolite after his stoppage defeat by Olympic champion Galvin in April 2023. UCAD released a statement announcing Caleres' suspension, but quickly removed the post after learning the fighter had died. Caleres, who died aged 34, left behind an impressive fight record of 37 wins, 11 losses, and 1 draw. He made his professional debut in 2008, fighting at minimum weight and flyweight. He was unsuccessful in his one world title challenge in 2018 and was 1 fight away from competing in 50 professional bouts. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, here's a look at some of our top stories. We told you that top political leaders in Rivers State marched in solidarity for Wike. We also told you that ANC slammed DA for outrageous demands in South African government. Finally, you heard that Kenyan youth protesters have continued nationwide strike over multiple tax hikes. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Darshan Usman.